A trembling hand dialed the restricted number. Beatrice, gasping for breath as she leaned her heavy frame against the mahogany wall, whispered frantically into the receiver. "Mr. Costello, please come home now. She'll destroy her." For the first time in his ruthless life, the untouchable syndicate boss felt paralyzing fear. The Costello estate in Lake Forest, Illinois, was a fortress disguised as a breathtaking architectural marvel. Surrounded by 10-foot wrought-iron gates and patrolled by men whose suits cost more than most cars, it was a sanctuary built on blood money. Dominic Costello, the undisputed head of the Chicago syndicate, ruled his empire with an iron fist and a cold, calculating mind. But inside the walls of his sprawling mansion, the dynamics of power were shifting in ways he failed to see. Beatrice Higgins saw it all. At 52 years old, and carrying nearly 300 pounds on her 5'4" frame, Beatrice was a woman who was entirely used to being invisible. Her uniform strained against her broad shoulders and wide hips, and her heavy, labored footsteps were a familiar sound on the mansion's marble floors. She suffered from swollen ankles and chronic joint pain, making the grand, sweeping staircases of the Costello estate a daily torment. Yet Beatrice possessed a heart as expansive as her silhouette. She was the head maid, a position she had held for over a decade, long before the cartel alliances and the new money flooded in. She was fiercely loyal to Dominic, but her true devotion belonged to his 7-year-old daughter, Mia. Mia was a ghost of a child. After witnessing a brutal attempt on her father's life 2 years prior, an ambush that had claimed her mother's life, the little girl had stopped speaking entirely. Her silence was a heavy, suffocating blanket that rested over the house, a constant reminder of the price of Dominic's chosen profession. Beatrice had become the girl's surrogate mother. It was Beatrice's thick, soft arms that rocked Mia to sleep during her night terrors. It was Beatrice who baked her favorite pastries, sneaking them up to the nursery, ignoring the painful throbbing in her knees, just to see a fleeting smile cross the child's pale face. Then came Isabella. Isabella Navarro was the daughter of a prominent Miami cartel boss. She was 26, impossibly thin, and possessed a razor-sharp beauty that felt almost weaponized. Dominic had brought her into his home 3 months ago as his fiancée, a strategic merger meant to consolidate power between the Midwest and the southern borders. Isabella was a woman accustomed to absolute submission. She demanded perfection, draped herself in European couture, and looked at the world as if it were dirt beneath her red-soled stilettos. From the moment Isabella crossed the threshold, she despised the estate's imperfections, and in her eyes there were 2 glaring ones: the fat, wheezing maid who dared to look her in the eye, and the broken, mute child who stood in the way of her complete dominance over Dominic. "You're breathing too loudly, Beatrice," Isabella would snap, lounging on a velvet chaise in the sunroom while sipping espresso. "It is entirely unappetizing. Have you no shame about your condition? You look like a stuffed pig waddling through my hallways." Beatrice would simply bow her head, clutching her feather duster a little tighter in her plump hands. "My apologies, Miss Isabella." But the insults directed at her were nothing compared to the psychological warfare Isabella waged against Mia. When Dominic was present, Isabella played the role of the doting future stepmother to perfection. She would gently stroke Mia's hair, her voice dripping with artificial honey, speaking of the beautiful family they were going to be. Dominic, blinded by the stress of managing a multi-billion-dollar underworld enterprise, believed the illusion. He wanted peace in his home. He needed it. The moment Dominic's armored SUV rolled out of the driveway, however, The mask slipped. Isabella's hostility toward Mia was insidious. It started with small things. Isabella would instruct the kitchen staff to throw away Mia's favorite stuffed animals, claiming they were unhygienic. She would lock the doors to the gardens, trapping the child inside the sterile, echoing halls of the mansion. Beatrice watched, her heart breaking, as Mia shrunk further into herself, her wide, terrified eyes tracking Isabella's every move, like a prey animal trapped with a predator. Beatrice tried to intervene subtly. She would quietly unlock doors, retrieve the discarded toys from the rubbish bins, and stand as a physical barrier between the ruthless heiress and the fragile child. Her large body, often a source of deep personal shame and physical discomfort, became a shield. When Isabella tried to isolate Mia in the dark parlor, Beatrice would intentionally enter the room, pretending to meticulously clean the chandeliers, refusing to leave the child alone. Isabella noticed. The young cartel princess was not stupid. She recognized defiance, even when it came wrapped in an oversized maid's uniform. "You think you are protecting her, you fat, useless cow," Isabella hissed one afternoon, cornering Beatrice in the pantry, her manicured nails dug into the wooden doorframe. "Dominic is marrying me. This house is mine. That defective little brattet is a stain on his legacy, and you are nothing but the hired help. Cross me again, and I will have my father's men carve you up and feed you to the stray dogs in the alleyway. Do we understand each other?" Beatrice looked down at the beautiful, venomous woman. Fear pulsed through her chest, making her breath hitch. She knew the Navarro family's reputation. They were skinners, butchers, who made examples of anyone who defied them. But as she looked past Isabella's shoulder and saw young Mia peeking nervously from around the hallway corner, her trembling hands steadied. "I understand, Miss Isabella," Beatrice replied softly, her voice remarkably calm. But internally, a line had been drawn. The silent watcher was preparing for war. Mid-November brought a bitter chill to Lake Forest, matching the icy tension inside the Costello estate. Dominic had been summoned to New York for a highly volatile sit-down with the Commission. The negotiations were expected to take 3 days, keeping him completely incommunicado in a heavily guarded, signal-jammed bunker in Manhattan. It was the opportunity Isabella had been waiting for. On the morning of the second day, Isabella initiated her purge. She systematically dismissed the interior security detail, citing a desire for privacy. She sent Leo, Dominic's trusted head of security, on a wild goose chase to the city to retrieve a custom wedding dress fitting that didn't actually exist. By noon, the mansion was practically empty, save for the kitchen staff sequestered in the basement, Isabella, Mia, and Beatrice. Beatrice felt the shift in the atmosphere. The house was too quiet. Her bad knees ached fiercely as she pushed her cleaning cart down the second-floor corridor, her heavy breathing echoing in the silence. She was looking for Mia. The child usually hid in the library when the house felt unsafe, burying herself in picture books. As Beatrice approached the grand library, the heavy oak doors were slightly ajar. From within, she heard the terrifying sound of glass shattering, followed by a sharp, cruel laugh. "Look at it! Look at your pathetic mother!" Isabella's voice rang out, sharp and unhinged. Beatrice abandoned her cart, ignoring the shooting pain in her hips, and moved as fast as her large frame would allow. She pushed the heavy door open and gasped. The library was in disarray. Isabella stood near the roaring fireplace, holding a framed photograph of Dominic's late wife, Mia's mother. The glass from the frame lay shattered on the Persian rug. Mia was backed into a corner, her small body trembling violently, tears streaming down her silent face. She was weak, Isabella taunted, stepping closer to the child, waving the photograph. And you are just like her. Defective. Broken. A mute little freak who ruins everything. Do you know what Dominic told me? He told me he's exhausted by you. He told me he wishes he could just send you away to a hospital so he wouldn't have to look at your miserable face anymore. It was a lie, a vicious, calculated lie, meant to shatter the child's psyche completely. Isabella stepped forward, gripping the heavy iron poker from the fireplace stand. She wasn't going to hit the child. She was smarter than that. But she was going to traumatize her to the point of catatonia. "Say something," Isabella shrieked, slamming the iron poker against a mahogany side table, splintering the wood. "Speak, you little psycho, or I'll burn this picture to ashes." Beatrice didn't think. Her maternal instincts overrode every ounce of fear. She threw her 300-pound body forward, placing herself squarely between Isabella and the terrified child. "Stop it!" Beatrice bellowed, her voice booming with an authority she didn't know she possessed. "Leave her alone!" Isabella blinked, momentarily stunned by the sheer mass of the woman, suddenly blocking her path. Then, her face contorted into a mask of pure rage. "Get out of my way, you bloated pig! I am the lady of this house." "You are a monster," Beatrice panted, reaching behind her to pull Mia against her wide, soft back. "And I will not let you break this child." Isabella swung the iron poker. She didn't aim for Mia. She aimed for the obstacle. The heavy iron struck Beatrice across the left shoulder with a sickening crack. Pain exploded through Beatrice's body, dropping her to her knees with a heavy, breathless thud. But even as she fell, she wrapped her massive arms around Mia, curling her large body over the child like a protective shell, absorbing the brunt of Isabella's ensuing physical and verbal assault. Isabella kicked Beatrice's side, her sharp heel digging into the maid's ribs. "Filth! I'll kill you both. I'll have you thrown in the river." Struggling to remain conscious through the blinding pain, Beatrice managed to free one hand. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out her cell phone. She hit the speed dial she had memorized, but never dared to use. The emergency line. In a dark, smoke-filled room in Manhattan, surrounded by the most dangerous men in the country, Dominic Costello's burner phone vibrated. He held up a hand, silencing a mob boss from Brooklyn, and stepped away to answer. Only 3 people had this number, and 2 of them were in the room with him. "Yeah?" Dominic answered, his voice a low, dangerous gravel. "Mr. Costello," Beatrice gasped, coughing as another kick landed on her heavy thigh. Her voice was frantic, breathless, and laced with agony. "Please come home now. She'll destroy her." The call disconnected. Dominic's blood turned to ice. He didn't ask questions. He didn't explain himself to the commission. He simply turned to his underboss, his eyes hollow and terrifying. "Get the chopper, now!" The 3-hour journey felt like an eternity. Dominic's mind raced through 1,000 horrific scenarios. By the time his helicopter touched down on the estate's sprawling lawn, the sun was setting, casting long, bloody shadows across the grass. He sprinted toward the front doors, drawing his custom 1911 pistol, his heart hammering against his ribs. He kicked the front doors open, the wood splintering off the hinges. The house was deathly quiet. He moved with lethal precision, tracking the faint sounds of weeping coming from the 2nd floor. When Dominic Costello walked into the grand library, the weapon nearly slipped from his fingers. The sight before him was something he would never, for the rest of his life, be able to erase from his mind. When Dominic Costello walked into the Grand Library, he was not the polished, calculating syndicate boss who commanded boardrooms and back-alley empires. He was a father staring into the abyss. The heavy oak doors, already splintered, gave way completely under his hand, slamming against the mahogany-panelled walls with a sound like a gunshot. The scene before him froze the blood in his veins. The library, normally a sanctuary of leather-bound books and quiet contemplation, was a war zone. Shattered glass glittered violently across the antique Persian rug. But it was the center of the room that stole the air from Dominic's lungs. Beatrice, the quiet, heavy-set maid who had blended into the background of his estate for over a decade, was collapsed on the floor. Her uniform was torn and stained with blood, blooming rapidly across her left shoulder. Her massive frame was curled into a protective dome, her thick arms wrapped desperately around the tiny, trembling form of his daughter Mia. Standing above them, breathing heavily and gripping a heavy wrought-iron fireplace poker, was Isabella. The beautiful Miami heiress looked entirely unhinged. Her designer dress was wrinkled, her perfectly styled hair was disheveled, and her eyes burned with a manic, ugly fury. She had the iron poker raised, preparing to bring it down on Beatrice's broad back once more. "Drop it," Dominic said. His voice was not a roar. It was not a scream. It was a terrifyingly quiet, hollow whisper that carried the weight of a graveyard. It cut through the adrenaline in the room like a scalpel. Isabella froze, her eyes snapping towards the doorway. The color instantly drained from her flawless, olive-skinned face. The heavy iron poker slipped from her manicured fingers, landing on the thick rug with a dull, heavy thud. She stumbled backward, her red-soled heels catching on the fringe of the carpet. "Dominic!" Isabella gasped, her voice trembling as she frantically tried to assemble the mask of the dutiful fiancé. She smoothed her dress with shaking hands. "Dominic, thank God you are home. The maid, she went crazy. She tried to attack me. I was just trying to protect myself and Mia. She's deranged, Dominic. You have to believe me." Dominic did not look at her. He didn't even acknowledge her existence in that moment. His eyes were locked on the large, heaving mound of Beatrice's back. He holstered his 1911 pistol, his movements deliberately slow, and walked across the room. He knelt beside the maid, completely ignoring the crunch of shattered glass beneath his expensive shoes. "Beatrice," Dominic murmured, gently resting a hand on her uninjured shoulder. "Beatrice, it's me. You can let go now. I'm here." Beatrice groaned, a wet, ragged sound of immense pain. Slowly, painfully, she uncurled her heavy body. Her face was bruised, her lip split, and tears of agony and relief streamed down her plump cheeks. But as she pulled back, she revealed Mia, completely untouched, clutching the fabric of Beatrice's apron with white-knuckled desperation. "Mr. Costello," Beatrice wheezed, her chest heaving as she struggled to breathe through what were undoubtedly fractured ribs. "I'm sorry. I couldn't let her." "Shh," Dominic commanded gently, pulling a pristine silk handkerchief from his breast pocket and pressing it against the laceration on Beatrice's shoulder. "Do not apologize. You did exactly what you had to do." Isabella, panicking at the complete dismissal, took a step forward. "Dominic, are you blind? Look at her. She's a lying, fat cow. She threw herself at me. The child is a brat. She was throwing a tantrum, and this, she is lying." The voice was tiny, raspy from 2 years of disuse, and as fragile as spun glass. Dominic froze. Beatrice gasped, her eyes flying wide open. Even Isabella stopped her frantic rambling, staring in absolute shock. Mia Costello pushed herself up from the floor. She stepped out from behind the safety of Beatrice's large frame and looked directly at her father. Her small face was streaked with tears, but her eyes held a clarity that hadn't been there since the day her mother died. "She is lying, Papa," Mia said again, her voice gaining a fraction more strength. She pointed a small, trembling finger at Isabella. "She said awful things about Mama. She tried to hit me. B saved me. B always saves me." For a man who orchestrated the movements of millions of dollars and hundreds of dangerous men, Dominic Costello was rendered entirely speechless by the sound of his daughter's voice. A single tear broke free from his cold, calculating eyes, tracing a path down his cheek. He reached out, pulling Mia into his chest, burying his face in her dark hair. He held her tight, feeling the steady beat of her heart against his own, anchoring him to his humanity. Then the humanity vanished. Dominic stood up. He left Mia safely kneeling beside the weeping Beatrice and turned his attention to Isabella. The temperature in the room seemed to plummet 20 degrees. Isabella backed away until her spine hit the bookshelves. "Dominic, please, it's a misunderstanding," she pleaded, her voice pitching into a hysterical squeak. "My father. You need my father. The Navarro cartel." "Your father," Dominic interrupted, his voice dropping into a register that promised absolute destruction, "is a businessman. He deals in product, and he deals in leverage. He thought you would be leverage." Dominic pulled a sleek, encrypted phone from his pocket and pressed a single button. Within 30 seconds, the sound of heavy boots echoed down the hallway. 3 of Dominic's personal enforcers, men who had not been dismissed by Isabella's fake orders, but who had been stationed in the woods surrounding the perimeter at Dominic's secret behest, filled the doorway. "Get a trauma medic in here right now. Call Dr. Aris at Northwestern Memorial. Tell him I need a private suite ready in 20 minutes, Dominic ordered, without looking at the men. He then pointed a rigid finger at Isabella. "Take this trash down to the soundproof holding room in the basement. Zip-tie her to the chair. If she speaks, break her jaw." "You can't do this!" Isabella screamed as 2 massive men grabbed her arms, dragging her toward the door. "My family will slaughter you! They will burn this house to the ground!" "Let them try," Dominic whispered to the empty space she left behind. He turned back to Beatrice, who was blinking through the pain, cradling Mia's hand in her own. The invisible maid had broken the curse of silence over the Costello house, and in doing so, she had fundamentally altered the fate of the Chicago syndicate. The political fallout of detaining the daughter of a Miami cartel boss was equivalent to holding a lit match over a powder keg. For 3 days, Dominic Costello did not sleep. While Beatrice recovered in a highly secured VIP wing at Northwestern Memorial Hospital under assumed names, Dominic operated out of his mansion's basement, conducting the most dangerous negotiations of his life. He knew he couldn't kill Isabella. The Navarro cartel controlled the southern ports, and a war would cost Dominic billions and put a permanent target on Mia's back. But Dominic had not built his empire by backing down. During the interrogations, handled meticulously by Dominic's most terrifying extractors, the truth of Isabella's actions came to light. The abuse of Mia had not merely been born of jealousy, it was a distraction. Isabella had been tasked by her father, Hector Navarro, to locate the physical ledgers containing the routing numbers for Dominic's offshore accounts in the Caymans. She had been clearing the house of security, not just to torment the child, but to allow a team of Navarro's digital thieves access to the estate's servers. Beatrice's intervention had thwarted a coup that would have bankrupted the Costello syndicate. On the fourth night, Dominic arranged a secure video link to Miami. Hector Navarro appeared on the screen, a ruthless, gray-haired man sitting behind a massive desk. "You have my daughter, Dominic," Hector said, his voice laced with deadly calm. "This is a violation of our truce. If she is not on a private jet back to Miami by midnight, I will send 300 men to Chicago." Dominic leaned back in his leather chair, smoking a cigar. He looked entirely unbothered. "Hector, your daughter is alive. She is unharmed, save for her pride. But you and I both know she wasn't just planning a wedding. She was looking for the Cayman ledgers." Hector's eyes narrowed slightly, the only sign of his surprise. "I have forwarded a file to your secure server," Dominic continued, his tone conversational. "It contains video footage of your daughter attempting to brutalize my 7-year-old child. It also contains the recorded confession of the digital breach she attempted. If you send men to Chicago, I will send this file to the commission in New York. I will send it to the Sinaloa boys you are currently trying to appease. The entire underworld will know that Hector Navarro uses his daughter to sneak into homes and steal money like a common rat because he is too weak to win a war on the streets." Silence hung heavy over the encrypted connection. In the Mafia world, reputation was currency. Being exposed as a sneak thief, a man who broke the sacred rules of guest right to rob an ally, would isolate the Navarro cartel instantly. "What do you want, Costello?" Hector finally ground out. "The alliance is dead," Dominic stated coldly. "You will surrender 20% of your shipping profits through the port of Miami to my organization for the next 5 years as a tax for insulting me. In exchange, I keep the files buried, and I send your treacherous daughter back to you in one piece." Hector Navarro's jaw clenched so hard it looked ready to fracture. But he was a pragmatist. He knew he had been outplayed. "Agreed." Hours later, Isabella was thrown out of a black SUV onto the tarmac of O'Hare International Airport, stripped of her designer clothes and forced to wear a cheap, generic tracksuit. She boarded the plane to Miami in disgrace, her grand ambitions shattered by the sheer willpower of a woman she had deemed less than human. 2 weeks later, the atmosphere inside the Costello estate had fundamentally shifted. The dark, oppressive gloom that had suffocated the mansion for 2 years was gone. The heavy drapes were pulled back, allowing the pale winter sunlight to flood the marble floors. Dominic walked into the expansive sunroom, carrying a stack of files. He paused in the doorway, a rare, genuine smile touching his lips. Sitting on the expensive velvet chaise lounge, the very one Isabella used to command, was Beatrice. She was still recovering, her arm strapped in a heavy sling, a colorful blanket draped over her wide lap. Sitting right beside her, leaning against Beatrice's soft, uninjured side, was Mia. The little girl was reading aloud from a storybook, her voice still quiet but steady and bright. Dominic stepped into the room. Beatrice immediately tried to stand up, her face flushing with the ingrained habit of subservience. "Sit down, Beatrice," Dominic ordered, though his voice was entirely devoid of its usual sharp edge. He walked over and sat on the armchair opposite them. He placed a heavy, sealed manila envelope on the coffee table. "What is this, Mr. Costello?" Beatrice asked, looking at the envelope nervously. "Your new contract," Dominic said simply. "You are no longer a maid in this house. You are the head of household, and more importantly, you are Mia's official guardian should anything ever happen to me. The envelope contains the legal paperwork, as well as the deed to a property in your name in Oak Brook, fully funded for your retirement whenever you choose to take it, and a salary that reflects your actual value to this family." Beatrice stared at the envelope. tears welling in her eyes. "Mr. Costello, Dominic, I don't know what to say. I'm just me." "You," Dominic said, looking from the heavy-set woman who had risked everything to the daughter who had found her voice again, "are the bravest person I have ever known. This house owes you its life." Beatrice Higgins, the fat, invisible maid who had spent her life shrinking away from the world, finally allowed herself to take up space. She wrapped her good arm around Mia, pulled the little girl close, and for the first time in a long time, she felt entirely, undeniably beautiful. The ultimate Mafia betrayal turned into a heart-warming triumph. Isabella thought she could break the Costello family from the inside, but she severely underestimated the fierce loyalty of the woman she treated like dirt. Beatrice risked her life, saved an empire, and helped a traumatized child find her voice again, proving that true power doesn't come from violence, but from a brave heart. If you loved this incredible story of courage, justice, and family, hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe for more thrilling, real-life drama.